Witchcraft by Michael Northrop, Chapter 13. The snow gophers never showed, so a few hours later, we made our way toward the cafeteria. Jason was carrying a hammer and some sort of metal bolt, and Les still had his hat on his hand like a boxing glove from when he punched it through the window. Those two had been down to the shop, and Pete had walked through the halls to get to the second floor bathroom. But the rest of us weren't prepared for how dark the school was away from the glass hallway. It was daytime now, and it seemed like it should be light, but away from the glass hallway, the windows were mostly covered, literally buried in snow, and the emergency lights were out now. In most places, it was harder. It was darker now than it had been the night before. It was a little better in the hallway leading to the cafeteria. Big windows looking out on the courtyard let in some light at the top. It almost seemed a little warmer. I think we're over the furnace, said Jason. Pete went over to a vent and put his hand on it. Yeah, he said something. We crowded around like it was an exhibit at a zoo. The North American speckled heating vent. A faint current of lukewarm air was lazily drifting out. It wasn't much, but when you put your hand up to it and held it there, you could definitely feel it. I put both hands up and then pressed my palms against my face. It felt good. Like the last gasp of a dying animal, said Jason, and right then I realized why I'd been such a jerk to him. He had leapfrogged me, definitely before yesterday. I'd been a step or two ahead of him. More popular, smarter, better athlete, but now in the shut-down school, he'd taken the lead. All the things that people sort of held against him were advantages now. His dad worked some construction and was really maybe a step or two above a handyman. But he'd also taught Jason more about buildings than any of us would ever know. And Jason's fatigue pants and snipper rifle t-shirt and that little whiff of violence hanging around him might have seemed a little ridiculous with late bells and assistant principals around. But now, lights out and on our own, it didn't seem ridiculous at all. And what was I, a good basketball player? A streaky shooter with decent range, A, B plus student more or less. Now that seemed ridiculous. So all of this was occurring to me right then, and I guess I was sort of staring at him. He saw me, shrugged his shoulders, and put a look on his face like, what stops being such a freak? I let out a little laugh because I really was being a freak. He smiled and shook his head, and I knew that none of that stuff about leapfrogging and B-plus grades had exactly occurred to him. And I knew Jason, so I knew that even if it had, he was still my friend. Les was already kneeling down in front of the big double doors that led into the caf. Here it is, he said. He had his finger on a little circle on the bottom corner of the right-hand door. From the way it was catching the dim light, you could see it was unpainted metal. He put his finger on the center and made a little turning motion, showing where the key would go. Give me the stuff, he said, and you could see it caught Jason a little off guard. He made this gesture, putting the hammer and bolt in closer to his body, like mine. Les stood up, a good 2 inches taller than Jason. They didn't look like friends anymore. Jason did some little calculation in his head and handed over the tools. I made eye contact with Jason and he gave me a slight shrug like, why not? I've been thinking the same thing. Let Les do all the breaking, the shop window, the cafeteria door, then we can sell him out if we get in trouble for it. Les was kneeling down and hunched forward on the floor again, and we shifted around so that we could see what he was doing. He could put the He put the tip of the metal bolt up against the cylinder of the lock with his left hand, turned his body to allow his right hand some room, and then swung the hammer in a little underhand arc. Bang. The tip of the bolt pushed the cylinder maybe a quarter of an inch in. Bang, half an inch. One more swing, the bolt went all the way in, the cylinder disappeared, and Les slammed his hand between the hammer and the door. Bang, pop, ow. He stood up, shaking his hand. I truly believe that if anyone had laughed at him right then, he would have driven that bolt straight into their skull. We just stood there as he swore. I looked over at Krista, and she was literally holding her breath. Once Les had gotten it out of his system, he handed the tools back to Jason. He did it in a sort of here, take this way, and I didn't care for much. Then he turned back around and pushed on the double doors. They swung open easily. Normally, we went through those doors in a long, slow line, but today we all pushed our way in at once. We were hungry, and the prospect of food was exciting, like Christmas morning and Thanksgiving dinner combined. And there was something else, too. Another little thrill. I remember thinking, well, that's that. We've done it now. We've smashed something, broken in. We might say that Les did it, but it was all us. But it was all of us. He was our device, just like the hammer was his. I remember thinking we can do anything here now. This place is ours until someone comes to take it back. Someone old and angry.